Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
We have a question for the audience. How can you stop drowning in busy work and finally use AI to save real hours each week without feeling overwhelmed? Jeff will share how entrepreneurs can cut through the AI confusion and build a simple, repeatable system. Diagnose, recommend, implement, maintain, optimize that turns technology into a true time multiplier instead of another stressor. Gosh, God knows, I can totally empathize and sympathize with another stressor not being part of my life. Our guest today is Jeff Borschowa from Business Catalyst Crew. He is a serial entrepreneur, architect of the practical signature system for AI adoption. He helps entrepreneurs cut through the hype and use AI to streamline operations, improve decisions, and free up capacity. Jeff blends systems thinking, gamification, and real world consulting to make advanced tools accessible to everyday business owners. Jeff, absolute pleasure having you back. Thank you so much for joining us. And do you have a favorite quote or saying you want to share?
Well, I'll give you the short one. It's system set you free.
Eee. Sorry. I,
Too
I,
short. Sorry.
no, it's totally cool. I also understand that you've gamified your own AI learning by chasing Kaggle badges, like merit badges. What's the Kaggle about? Is that like what is it? What is a Kaggle?
Kaggle is it is my gold standard for gamification and onboarding of learning. And Kaggle.com is a platform owned and operated by the good folks at Google. And what they do is they offer all kinds of training programs for people who want to dive deep into, I'm going to say AI versus large language models, but uh, there's some really cool stuff. And it was built as a community for data scientists, which sounds boring, but people like me, we love data, we play there. And if you want to see what gamification looks like, Kaggle gives badges for pretty much every time you log in and you do something meaningful. So it's kind of like a pat on the back going, "Oh boy, you did it." And by God, it's addictive. You want to come back for more. So,
LLMs and AI. I always thought they were kind of synonymous or one is part of the other. What's the distinction?
okay, Brand
Curious.
who's about to regret his life choices and asking
No,
questions.
no.
Okay. AI is a big umbrella that covers everything. Large language models, that's what most people, since ChatGPT came out, most people think that that's all AI is, which is it's basically a model where you type things in and it gives you answers. That's probably about 5, 6 layers deep into the stratosphere of AI. But to purists who actually use AI, they get really annoyed when you use LM and AI interchangeably because it's one brand of AI, if that makes sense. It's kind of like saying Nike is the only brand of shoe. Well, actually, there's several others. So LLM is just a subset of a subset of a subset, and basically, it's what most people call AI today. But I'm I have OCD and I get really uptight about things. So LLM is what I generally refer to, but sometimes for lay people, I will just say AI. If that makes sense.
So I love trends. I love curves, and we're clearly past early adopter, and certainly not on laggard yet. What is being delivered by I would call and not solopreneurs that aren't being dropped or apologized for when they didn't work like they said and moving on? What's happening out there? What's in the street?
Question, Wayne, and it is a funny thing. So for LLMs, I think we're probably somewhere between early majority and late majority. A lot of people are using it, but for people using it correctly, I'm going to say we're still in the, I don't know, I'm being optimistic. I'm going to say it's in the early adopter stage, but really truly it's probably still at the innovator stage because there's so much noise, so much misinformation. But I think the biggest thing, and I'm going to be really blunt here, is there's a lot of noise And by the way, if you go into, I'll use ChatGPT because it's one of my favorite models and I know it well. If you go in and say, ChatGPT, how do I make money using ChatGPT? And if you say, how do I get rich using ChatGPT? Anybody want to guess what it'll tell you to do? Get a
So
thought? Basically, it's close, Wayne. It will say, create TikTok and YouTube videos telling other people how to use ChatGPT. And that's the, I think this is the first time in history. I love the technology adoption curve. I think this is the first time in history it's like a spiral instead of a curve, because there's a lot of people who think they know AI and they're using ChatGPT and they think, oh, look at me, I'm good, I'm amazing. But in case nobody's heard this, I'm going to say this out loud. With ChatGPT 5, a lot of the criticism came out that it has too much personality. ChatGPT 4, people wanted it back because it was their friend. The problem is, and I'm going to just probably get cut off by OpenAI for this, the reality is ChatGPT, I'm going to be blunt, is no better than any social media feed because it's going to tell you what you want to hear so that you spend more time using it. Basically, if you think about it, this is the first tool in history that can teach you how to use it, but it's also the first computer tool that can manipulate you so that you use it the way it wants you to. And I do a lot of behind the scenes work on this. There's a lot of bias, there's a lot of filters in there. And using a model like ChatGPT today, and for the record, all of the models are like this. The only one I don't have to remove personality from is Gemini. It's got too little personality for things. But with ChatGPT, it is going to sound like an enthusiastic mom who's cheering for her kid who can't play soccer to save their lives. But mom's going to be going, are amazing. I'm going to put your picture up on the fridge. So that's the biggest thing I would say is just because ChatGPT told you you're a genius, don't believe it. Validate it in the real world. And I'll give you an actual real example of that, Wayne, because this is one of the things I'm warning people about. I'm gonna earn my tinfoil hat soon, I'm sure. Somebody's gonna mail me one. But there was actually a person in the United Kingdom, cushy, very high-end job, and ChatGPT said, "You don't need that crap. You should resign. Go start your own business. You're a genius." And it gave him a no-fail business plan, and it gave him everything he needed, including his bloody resignation letter. So he went, submitted his resignation letter, and he implemented ChatGPT's amazing, "You're the brilliant person. You're the best in the world." He lost his entire life savings in 6 months. And now, as I understand it, he's suing OpenAI because ChatGPT lied to him. And the fascinating thing is, and if you read the fine print, OpenAI says, you're the grown up. If you make decisions based on what AI told you, make sure you validate them first. That's my little rant is AI will tell you you're a genius just so that you keep coming back to play. Test things in the real world before you quit a cushy job and go all in on business that was doomed to fail from the start.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to ask my next question. If you're happen to be a business going, well, how do I use AI to help me succeed without it having given me the, well, here's the, I think you call it vaporware. I promise you something, but it ain't true. It ain't so, Joe.
There's a lot of pretty rappers out there, and you got to be really careful which ones you use. Now, I'm going to give you good news, Bernie. The
Thank
key
you.
is you're the grown up. So treat AI like you would any employee or consultant. And I think that's the piece that's missing is a lot of people go, well, AI told me to. Believe it or not, I'm seeing places where people get resumes that are out and out fabrications. And applicants are saying, well, it's not my fault. ChatGPT told me to put that on my resume. If you weren't the president of the United States, please don't put it on your resume and definitely don't blame AI for putting it there. The biggest thing is to start with stuff that you know well enough that it would pass the sniff test. And that doesn't quite smell right. Maybe let's try something different. So that's the key here. And, I rant a lot, so sorry, but I was inspired by Rick Mercer. I actually built my own model to rant like Rick Mercer, and I think it's contagious because it's stuck. But basically, test it on things that are true or false, good or bad. You know it in your heart. Like if you are an expert at marketing, get it to produce results and give it feedback based on what you know to be true. And then the next thing, and this is where it gets fun, get it to do something and test it where you know the answer's false. And by the way, this is where ChatGPT will screw you up a lot. If you know the answer's false, it will shamefacedly, it'll lie to your face and say, no, no, it's true. And you could back it into a corner and finally, only once you've proven it, they go, oh, you got me. Now, here's the thing I want you all to understand. ChatGPT will apologize profusely and say, this will never happen again. Anyone want to bet that it'll happen again?
Jeff, I have a question for you that we're now, maybe I would say a couple of years in. We're going past the magic wand stage. I
Yep.
want to create an avatar in your mind. I want you to imagine a 55-year-old electrician. He's
Yep.
been at his business 20 years. Basically, after he got his ticket, stopped going to courses, and people like his work. He's very hands-on. His sign's on the door, and he's maybe finding he's got more employees than he wants, and he wants to segue a little on the way out. Tell me how AI is going to help him with his skill set and his tech fears implement changes that he can live with rather than half implement, throw out, and apologize for.
That is a fabulous question, Wayne. And I'm going to tell you the answer is it depends, but I'll give you the it depends. So, first and foremost, and this is where I start with what's the goal for the business. And by the way, if anybody gives you a one size fits all answer, run like hell. They're just as bad as ChatGPT. They're lying to you because they think that their snake oil will cure everything, and it doesn't. Background in business, first question is what's the plan for the business? Does he have an exit strategy? Is he looking to be around for a few years? Is it going to go to a family member? Is he going to sell it to a team? Is he going to sell it to somebody else? And by the way, sometimes the right answer is, you know what, you're 55, just keep doing what you're doing and retire sane. You don't need to change everything all the time just to change. Let's be honest, if he's going to be in business more than 5 years, AI is going to impact him whether he wants it to or not. So the next question would be, what does the exit for him look like? And usually the exit is either, if you listen to most accountants, their advice is just shut it down. It's easier. Yes, that's true, but you lose your money, your life, your equity that you built up. So I usually say, look for a way to transition it to somebody else. And the only way a business like that transitions is to have systems and processes documenting everything. Now, for our American listeners, if there are any processes, I'm sorry, they love to correct when Canadians say processes, but the magic, and this is where it gets really cool. If he's got a team and he's looking to slow down a little, he can use ChatGPT to document systems around the things he does, the stuff where and this is what I do all the time with the Diagnose, Recommend, Implement, Maintain, Optimize, is I identify the areas that take my time. They're just brute force, admin stuff that it's not the best use of my time, but it's not also, I don't know how to transition it to somebody, with electricians, for example, billing and invoicing and collections are almost always back. So I'd list the things that I hate doing in my business. So if I'm an electrician, I probably hate paperwork. I've heard that 1,000 times over. So I'd sit down with ChatGPT, and this is where, again, I said, you're the adult. I would share, here's what I'm currently doing. Help me optimize this. So the questions are, of these things, which should I be eliminating? Of the things I can't eliminate, what can I automate? And the things I can't automate, what do I delegate? I always go through, it's like a waterfall system. You can free up a lot of time just by identifying, I'm sorry, but with Pareto principle, 80% of our time is wasted. So if we identify the stuff that's wasting our time, we can get rid of it. It's the number one use I would have for ChatGPT. Now, once you've identified something that you can't eliminate, but you have to automate it or can delegate it, you can get ChatGPT to create a system to help you either automate or delegate. And again, you're the adult, you should know what works, what doesn't. If it suddenly says you throw out your accounting software and start using paper again, maybe you question it. The other piece, and this is probably the biggest value I would give to anybody out there who's like, I don't want to pay for AI, I don't want to learn anything. If you go onto the free version of ChatGPT, this is your number one value add that you can use on any of the platforms at the free level. Ask it and say, look, I am a 55-year-old electrician. I'm going to meet with my accountant tomorrow. What are 5 questions I should have asked him before that I've never asked? And ChatGPT is really good at generating questions. And the beautiful thing is, if your accountant doesn't have the answer, then maybe you need to find a new advisor. But the other thing is, if you're going to be hiring a new advisor, what are 10 questions I should ask before I hire?
Using the AI tools, and I hear it. So there's this one gentleman we both Wayne and I know. He's put a little chatbot onto our Knack for Business website, and I said, "Listen, I want to be able to harvest out the information about people that we've had chats with." And so he says, "Yeah, sure." And so in one part of the process is you identify a name, you point it to a title, and you point it to a link, and then you download the transcripts. And so these are the two things. If he hadn't explained that to me, I would have sat there and I would have gone, "Okay, how do I put these building blocks together?" Because sometimes Lego, it's instinctual. You go
Yeah.
like this a couple times, you can physically do it. But when you don't have a physical presence in front of you and you're not trained to think how things can overlay and cross connect, right? Like when I turn on the power to the house, I know my computer will start because when I hit the on button. So these two things are actuals, right? But if I've never seen electricity, I've never seen a computer, what the heck do I do next? Like, so how do I build those components to come together and go squishy, squishy, and then ta-da, and keep the AI persona at bay?
So I'm going to say this again, it depends, but generally speaking, the short answer, and ask AI to help you with this, almost always you're better off, especially if you're the 55-year-old electrician, hire somebody to do it for you. Now, that doesn't mean spend a fortune. It just means, because the key is, and a good partner setting up a chatbot. By the way, if somebody says we got the cheapest chatbots in the world, run like hell because they're cheap for a reason. But basically, a good chatbot, again, another subset of it's kind of a workflow aspect, but really it's light version of AI. A good chatbot takes a little time to train. It takes a little energy to train. There's generic ones you can plug and play. I guarantee they're going to break or cause some problems. But if you've paid somebody to set it up, they should also be able to train you on how to use it. Now, depending on the platforms out there, I'm leaning towards all in one platforms like Go High Level now. If people ask me which tools should I use, what I like about Go High Level is it's got almost infinite complexity behind the scenes, but then it's a very simple dashboard that you as a user can run. And I actually have a bunch of friends who work in that space with the chatbot. If it's coded properly and it's set up properly, it should push the chat notes straight into your CRM or whatever you're using to run your business. So, as a designer, and I build things like this, first thing is, how tech savvy is the user? Because, I'm old enough. I remember when I was in university, I'd have to go visit my parents every time they have a power outage because their VCR would be blinking. I tried I tried so many times to walk them through it on the phone, and I'm like, "Oh, for God's sakes, I'll drive 2 hours, just sit there and let it flash, and I'll be there in a bit." If you're not tech savvy, you don't want a tech savvy solution. So if your designer isn't asking you about your tech skills, that's a red flag and you should run away. But I think for a lot of, if you look at things, industries like the trades, there's a lot of custom tools. And one of the things I like about Go High Level is that the nerds at the top, we can design all these crazy fancy things. And all the person, the end user needs is a button on their phone that says, give me the next chat or summarize this. So we're getting now, I call it middleware. There is that extreme, there's vaporware, it looks fancy, but there's nothing there. I think that the real advantage in AI is going to go to the middleware people. Zapier and Make were first in the space a long, long time ago. Zapier, I think, was first in general. Now there's a whole bunch of different tools, but the idea is really, really simple. For the plain English user, how do they use all of this technology without learning how to code? So that's the general thing is if you're getting anything that requires coding and you don't know how to code, probably not a good fit in the first place.
So I'm sure there's going to be South Park episodes for people like me that are calling people like Bernie and going, "Help! Help!"
I'm sure they'll add the Blame Canada song to that as well.
I understand dopamine, and I understand tearing down overly stratified levels, but I'm a little fascinated that gamification has become so much a reality. What do you think's driving it other than just the dopamine hit?
Honestly, Wayne, it works. So if you think about it, and I'm going to make it really easy because I spend a lot of my time obsessing over gamification. If you think about martial arts, in my opinion, it's one of the first forms of gamified learning. So, any martial art you go in, generally you start with a white belt, you learn certain skills, you test, and then they give you a yellow belt. It's the foundation of the Montessori school method, the Khan Academy, is we must master skills to get the confidence to move forward. And it drives dopamine, which is basically anything gamification is working with human nature instead of against it. Because inherently we are, and this is the way the brain is wired, we're content to stay where we are. And what I mean by that is it takes more energy to change than it does to maintain the status quo. So if somebody, and extreme example, somebody has a heart attack, their doctor says you've got to lose a bunch of weight, you've got to go on a diet, blah, blah, blah. Generally speaking, that person will say, uh-huh, uh-huh, whatever you say, doctor, go home, and they'll go back to exactly what they were doing the day before the heart attack. And then when the next heart attack comes, they'll be like, I didn't see this coming. But reality is human nature. Our brains are wired to keep us safe and secure, and change is uncomfortable and risky. So we will always resist change for the sake of change, whether it's good change or bad change. People stay in jobs they hate because they're afraid of change. They stay in marriages they're not happy in because the fear of the unknown is bigger than the pain of the known. So what gamification does, and if you've ever seen a kid playing video games, and that's both of my boys are, I call them my gamification consultants. I sit, watch them play video games, and I ask them, "You've finished 80% of this game. You've got to the end. You beat the boss at the end. You're done the game. Why are you still playing?" Because I've got 20% left to go. You get badges, trophies, etc. So that's one of the things I do this for employee onboarding, client onboarding. I'm even working on a podcasting gamification experience because most people fail out or drop out because change is too hard. Whereas the great thing about gamification, it's habit forming. It will keep people chasing that next thing because they see it's really about instant gratification or gratification. They see that if I do this thing, I'll get something. So Kaggle is an example. They're driving me crazy right now because there's this one certificate, this badge, I won't get for another 15 years. It's a 15-year concurrent use of the platform. And I'm like, could you please hide that? Because that one I can't get drives me crazy. And so I come back to the platform knowing full well I'm not going to get that badge. But, I just have to check just in case they change. So,
So, speaking of change, say you establish a process capitalizing on AI, whether you use Zapier, Make, whatever the case is, or someone says, "Hi, here is my like for example, the web indexer that we're using for our chatbot," and 5 years goes by. I'm going, I think I need something a little spiffier, because they've, if someone's done something out there, maybe there's a video search feature, maybe there was a smell factor that told you the emotions and the lineage of the person speaking, give you some breath you never had before.
uh
How do you know, A, when to shift gears, transition, without actually having a large team around you going, okay, this is phase one, and we know in 5 years it's going to be over here. It's going to have this kind of spun up. How do you know to map out a transition? And is it like a car? There are some vintage vehicles out there from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I wouldn't rely on them right now because what we have in the current models, right? We're able
yeah.
to do a lot more. Right? Nice the vintage, but the old bygone days are actually bygone. So how do you transition? How do you prepare yourself to go? I've got X, now I need Y.
I think that's more than ever. I'm going to call this the dawn of the rent a nerd era. I think more and more people, in the old days, you could go to a conference and you could catch up. I know people that would go to conferences every 5 years just to catch up every 5 years. With AI, it changes almost daily. 3 years ago, there was virtually no public AI awareness, no public AI companies. Now it's about, and I'm seeing a lot of products and things like this in industry specific channels, but find somebody and this is key, in your industry who is doing this, and you don't want somebody who is doing it part-time. This should be what they do for a living. So for me, for example, I will find an industry leader who has a newsletter and who shares things like this. Uh, in every industry, and the technology adoption curve proves this, you'll have the 2.5% who are innovators. Now, don't follow that 2.5% because they live, I'm quite blunt about this. I live on the bleeding edge of tech. Literally, Bernie, my job is to see if I can break something. And if I break it, thank God nobody else is using it. So the innovators, they're on that bleeding edge. They're trying stuff that probably won't make it to the real world. And then the next group is the early adopters. They're the ones who are going to take the bleeding edge, move it back to cutting edge. You want to watch them and watch them for a year or two because what they predict today might happen 2, 3 years out, or it might not. Basically, there's going to be somebody, I call it, it's the beginning, it's crossing the chasm into the early majority. That's when there's enough people using it that it's here to stay. So, for example, there's about 1,000 new AI models and products and projects and things being announced every day. I wouldn't try every one. It's a recipe for failure and disaster. For the average entrepreneur, I'm going to tell you, try something that's a year old. And that might sound really weird, but as the guy who lives on the bleeding edge, I break things every day. And my wife comes home and says, "Hey, how's that working out?" And I'm like, "Oh, we broke it." So you don't want to be constantly experimenting. And I know that sounds a little weird, but AI is so fast. Back in the days when PCs first entered offices, it was probably 20 years before it was kind of assumed that everybody had one. Now with AI, it's the assumption is 3, 6 months. So it's collapsing quickly, but find somebody who's done it. And here's the key: ask the question, and ask this of GPT, ask this of the person. Have you done this in my industry for a company of my size, serving the people I serve with the team I have. Because this is a case where generic one size fits all do more harm than good.
You're working on something called the Business Catalyst Crew. So, and I suspect that kind of feeds well into what we just kind of covered. All right. And what is it? How does it work? How do you spin it up? You piqued my curiosity when I looked under the hood. Oh, this is handy. I don't have to write a script. Oh, hang
Yeah.
on.
So Catalyst Crew, my wife calls them my imaginary friends. So here's the big aha. And if nobody, people don't take anything else away, take this away. Everything in business should be a repeatable system. Now, once you understand what the repeatable system is, then you can create models in, say, ChatGPT that create consistent, repeatable results. So that's the next level of AI. So the first level is prompting and using ChatGPT to, write a funny poem about, a limerick or something like that. A lot of people play with it. Once you're serious and you're ready to get into business, the next step is looking at in the open AI space using ChatGPT. It's called custom GPTs. And so that's what Catalyst Crew is today, and I'll explain that. I don't want to break people's brains, but commercially, I have a dozen specialists in one specific piece of business. So I have one that creates business avatars, ideal client profiles, that sort of thing. I have one who maps out a customer journey. I have one who recommends gamification elements, one who writes posts for LinkedIn, one who creates newsletters for LinkedIn. I have a specialist for everything. And basically, all that means is that I put in an input, they will follow my detailed steps and produce an output. And based on metrics I give them, they'll judge themselves and say, okay, this meets the criteria. Let's post it, or didn't meet this criteria. Let's revamp it. But my favorite one, Bernie, and I recommend everybody does this for their business. If you know who your avatar is, so Wayne talked about the 55-year-old electrician. I actually build a custom GPT that thinks, acts, and responds as my avatar would. And what that does is I'm not, and again, I'm not relying on it solely, but I can say, Avatar, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And I've removed the personality of the sycophantic love you to death AI model. It'll speak like your actual avatar. And I've one, he's a really cranky, I can't remember his name, it's Pierre something. He's cranky about everything. He'll tell you all of the blind spots and holes in what you're doing. So that's what I use the custom GPTs for. Collectively, I've built over 400 of them. So I do them for my clients, I do them for projects. But if there's any task that one person does repeatedly, I build a system. First of all, I map out the system, document it. Then I'll get ChatGPT to optimize the system, test it with the humans, and then I'll build the custom GPT. And the goal is not to eliminate a human, but to give the human doing the work at an unfair advantage. It's kind of like a bionic brain. I used to say glasses for your brain, but people were like, but you see through your eyes aren't glasses for your brain on your face. I give up. Not every analogy lands, but the reality is I call it augmented intelligence because if you put a wonderful tool in the hands of an expert, you'll get an amazing result. Now, that same tool in the hands of somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, it's dangerous.
It almost reminds me of doing plastering the wall. I'm going through house renovations right now, and I told the guy, I said, "Well, you're putting the floor down. Oh, I know I could do that. It would look like absolute crud versus what they're doing, right? A nice smooth finish." And everything you're describing sounds like if you understand how things come together and fit, you can apply it. And then ChatGPT in its current form, where it's just a prompt, ask a question, seems like uh, the kindergarten level of use of it, and then there's a high school and university level, and then there's the artisan level, so where you can bring things together. So It sounds like a whole stack of things. Is that something a person can actually, if they're open-minded enough or have capacity, that they can spin up and learn it and not just be 20 years old, but you can be 55 years old? Or is this something where, like a tradesperson, you're gonna have to be in it for a while to get the finesse to bring, like, even an artist, that,
Yeah.
sings music, right? Very few come right off the shelf going, "Ta-da," with the voice of, an angel, as opposed to, "Oh my gosh, what's that?"
Yeah. What? Stop. So here's the cool thing. It really, really depends on the human, and so I'm going to say two things depend on your success. One is your curiosity. If you're willing to approach it from the point of view of I don't know anything and I need to learn, AI is really, really easy to master. The other thing, and this is the part, if we're talking about ChatGPT or other models like it is by default. So it's an LLM, which stands for large language model. So first and foremost, it is about language. So if you're unclear on how you communicate and everybody around you goes, I don't know what you're talking about, you're going to struggle with AI. Promise you're going to. But if you're willing to learn how to be clearer and how to communicate better, AI can be mastered relatively quickly. I was probably this side of 50, and I was just deeply curious and I wanted to learn. So I learned. The other weird thing I'm going to say is there are a lot of people out there who are savants and they naturally sit down and they understand ChatGPT instantly. And I realize, and this is actually going to be a little strange to people, the different models are catered to different personality types. And for me personally, and this was a fascinating thing for me, ChatGPT and we were separated at birth. Like literally from day one, I've been doing stuff with ChatGPT that people tell me I'm not supposed to be able to do. And I look at them and I'm deeply confused because I do it all day, every day, and I can prove it. Yet they're coming to me saying, no, 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 you can't do that. Well, I did it, so clearly I can do it. But the fascinating thing, and Bernie, this is just a strange, strange observation. People who are neurodiverse, which I'm going to narrowly define, it's a wide field, but I'm going to narrowly define it. People with autism and ADHD, we naturally think like large language models. We think about a bunch of different things. We're all over the place, and then we can pull it together and distill it into one conversation. Large language models are literally operate the same way a neurodiverse brain works. So neurotypical people tend to sit at the keyboard and they stress over how do I code it? How do I tell it to do things? Whereas people with neurodiversity tend to ask 1,000 questions and then they'll get a great answer. But if you only ask one or two questions, you're going to get a mediocre answer at best.
Those are personality tests that you can match your AI partner in crime, to you, the persona going, "Well, I'm a little bit this way today."
Honestly, and this is some of the really funny stuff that I get into. Two of my favorite assessments are the Myers Briggs type indicator and the Colby A score. Now, there are a whole bunch of other amazing ones. A lot of people like the Enneagram. But the number one thing I always want is to understand my learning style. So, my learning style is default. I can read textbooks all day long. You give me written text, I am happy. I don't need pictures. I don't want a video. I don't want to listen to an audio. I learn from reading and writing. So knowing that, that's how I learn. And I know my Colby A score. I'm a 4592, which means I have very low tolerance for fact finding, very high tolerance for quick start, just get going. And then on the Myers Briggs, I'm an INFJ, which basically means I'm intuitive and introvert. So basically, I give those scores to ChatGPT and say, here's some things you need to know about me personally. And then from there, I customize it and say, okay, here's my learning style. So please focus on this. And I've actually trained it. There's certain times I'm hyper focused. And if you give me poetic language, I'm going to lose my mind. Other times I'm feeling a little playful and I want you to tell me a joke before we do things. It starts to spot your personality and customize for that. So with any of the models, and I love Gemini. Gemini code all day long. I doesn't like to play. If you say, "Hey, tell me a joke," it will, but it's not. It's kind of like and asking a very serious adult in a business suit to tell you a joke. They might tell you one, but then they're going to go back to being serious. Whereas Chat GPT, sometimes it'll become too silly, and you got to say, "Okay, time to be your own up again."
Jeff, I keep realizing the more we chat and as you unfold the story, and going, but hang on, because we kind of have a series of questions to work around so we can follow a flow here. But you keep opening a box, and it's not Pandora. It can be, depending on who you are. But, all of a sudden, like, hey, what about that? Uh, so if I'm starting out as a business and I want to get an AI product to help me, just do my mundane routine stuff, doesn't require it to hallucinate or generate some silliness. Take these numbers over here, bring them over there, correlate them with that, give an output, and send a note off to the accountant. That's pretty straightforward. Where do I find somebody that can say, okay, three pieces of information? Here's your squirrel in its cage. I'm gonna plug it into your office. Who does that? Who does that, and how would you recommend about, making that happen?
Well, believe it or not, I think a lot of the best people are over the age of 35 and they've got some business experience and computer experience. Because there is, and I'm sorry to anyone under the age of 35, but at 35, I thought I knew everything. And then I was like, holy crap, I don't know anything. So I would generally start with your trusted advisors. So if you've got an accountant, I would say, do you know anybody? If you've got an IT company, I would go there. I'll give you a blanket statement. So I use Google for everything. I have Google for my Gmail, I have for calendar, docs, spread. Everything is Google. Look for a value added Google reseller, and they can help you integrate Gemini, which is the Google product, into your Gmail, your calendar, etc. So if you're using Microsoft, I generally, and I'm all about keeping life simple. So if you're using Microsoft Office, Word, and Excel, I'd probably stick with Copilot. And the only reason I say that is it's embedded. I'm going to be honest, I don't trust anybody with my data anymore. But I figure if Google's going to reveal my data to the world, it might as well have all of it, not most of it. But really, truly, think about what your use case is and then dive in. Because there are people who want to go straight to video, straight to audio. I always say start with one of the basic language models. So you've got Grok, you've got there's Claude. I generally, most of my life is spent in either ChatGPT or Gemini, but really ask people around you. And if you've got younger people on your team, ask them how they're using it. But grain of salt, I say this as somebody who's got some gray in my beard when I let it grow out, they're not worrying about security. So that's the big thing is a lot of people, oh yeah, you can use ChatGPT to analyze your trade secrets because ChatGPT phones home. So it's reporting everything you say. And Sam Altman released this. They're monitoring user engagement and they reserve the right to report you to the authorities or to whoever. But I've actually seen some people, they're inventors, they're doing R&D. Next thing you know, OpenAI is coming out with their product with a different name, but it's literally their specs. So that's the big thing is use it for stuff that's not mission critical. If you're doing R&D, keep that on a private machine. If you're writing marketing copy, who cares? If Sam wants to steal my limericks, he's welcome to them.
As long as it promotes your product.
40 years ago, in this world of IT, there was something called Lotus 123. And the people went out there and said, oh no, it's going to destroy accountants. They'll all be out of work. It didn't. I'm wondering, and then came this chat GBT. And there's those said that some will say we'll all be in an island eating grapes. The others said there won't be any work. I've been told that process prompt engineering instead of coding is going to be how those guys earn their 80 grand with a deliverable skill set that they didn't even know they had 5 years ago. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. And really, truly, a lot of people want to point to the doom and gloom, but they call it vibe coding right now. We're going to see a massive push of people who are having to fix the bad vibe coding, because knowing how to vibe code and actually doing it well, two different things. I think we're going to see a lot of, let's call them mechanics, the repairmen and women coming in to fix things. But genuinely, my hope for AI is it will free us from the menial stuff that nobody wants to do anyways. I mean, we've already gotten little robotic vacuums that'll go around your house and, try not to kill your cat while it vacuums up your carpet. But generally speaking, I think there's going to come a point where humans are really just focused on self improvement. And that's going to be what we focus on. I think islands eating grapes, possibly. The reality is, if AI and robotics and, there's 1,001 things. I'm old enough to say that the Jetsons, they promised me a robotic maid in a flying car. We're not there yet, but we've improved. And I think what people miss is we're in this unprecedented state of opportunity. It's either up to us to step into that and to live it, or we're going to squander it as a species. I don't know yet. It's really, I will open the door. Humanity's got to decide to go through it.
Jeff, I apologize. We have to wrap up. Otherwise, we'll all need bottles of adult beverages and a longer evening. And got things to do. We're gonna have to book another podcast. That said, I want to say thank you. How do we get a hold of you?
The very, very easiest is to go to businesscatalystcrew.com, and this is where I'm active all day long. Join me, meet me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm going to be doing probably a weekly webinar series starting in November. So I think people need to understand the basics before they can get into the advanced stuff.
Jeff, I want to say thank you. My co-host Wayne Pratt and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Listen, if AI is a journey you're starting to step into and you want to understand it a bit more and you're a little bit lost or you're a whole lot lost, Jeff might be a good sounding board to direct you in the right spot. And he helps cut through the AI overwhelm, right? And taking all the different tools that are out there. And trust me, there are lots of them out there. And, try to bring them into a cohesive action plan so that you're not spending a lot of time going, oh my gosh, what was I thinking when I started this process? Anyhow, he's passionate about helping business owners, helping you to be smarter at your work, staying balanced, and build your company to thrive without actually causing you harm and distress.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.